If you're in the market for a dual action polisher and you've seen Harbor Freight's lineup, then you are probably somewhat familiar with their 6-inch polishers, one being their short throw and one being their long throw polishers. So I bought both. I have a pretty good amount of experience in both, and I think I can provide some insight that may help you in your buying decision. Okay, so starting off, the reason I have both was when I got started about 10 years ago, I started with their smaller polisher, and this one, it's an 8mm short throw polisher. It does the 6-inch backing pads, and it's got a 5.7 amp motor on it. It can do 6,400 RPMs, and it was sub $75 or so at the time. So I started with that very early in my detailing experience, just figuring out how to get started and everything, because it's a very economical option. Since that time, I have worked into more vehicles, larger panels, boats, airplanes, and I needed something that would do larger sections a little bit faster. So that's where Harbor Freight started offering a 20mm long throw polisher, and this style fits a little bit more of what you'll see from Chemical Guys or Adams or something like that. This one, it looks a little bit less like an angle grinder. It's got your blade trigger, it's got your speed control up here, really close to your thumb, and it's got kind of this more ergonomically designed palm area for your hand. That being said, this one goes up to, it's 4,600 RPMs, it's got a 7.5 amp motor on it, and again, it's a 20mm long throw, so it's got a little bit more swing out than this smaller one here, which is good for when you're getting into those situations where you want to cut a little bit faster. That's where usually folks start moving toward the long throw polishers, is because you want to do larger sections with a little bit more speed. And just to level set expectations here, right? We're talking about two very budget-friendly polishers, right? There are a plethora of options that are twice as expensive as these and are probably have better quality in some of the things that we're going to talk about here in a second. But just as long as we start with the baseline that these are sub-$100 polishers as of 2026, I think we can start to appreciate the value for what you're getting. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I've got a pretty considerable amount of time on this model, probably at least a couple hundred hours. I've got maybe about 100 hours on this one, but in that time I have been able to use it on a boat and my airplane and a couple of other cars and trucks and stuff. So I've gotten to use this in some of those big, larger, flat panel areas that I think this one does really well on. With that being said, I am going to start addressing some of the things that I have noticed, having used both for enough time, to see some of the differences that you can expect if you are planning to buy both of these polishers. Okay, so one of the first things I want to discuss of something you can expect with these two polishers is heat management. So I have never had an issue with heating up pads or burning pads with this smaller polisher for the years that I've used it. I cannot say the same about this one. The long throw polisher, it builds up heat very, very quickly. And if you do a couple of Google searches or a couple of forum searches, you'll see there were some folks that were recommending taking apart the gearbox pretty much as soon as you buy it, before you even use it. Take apart the gearbox, scoop out all the old grease, and then put in some lithium, Lucas white lithium grease. And I did that, I made sure that there wasn't too much, too little, made sure all the backlashing on the gears was all put back together correctly. And the video that I saw, it was supposed to help a little bit. It still didn't, completely fix the problem. And I had pretty much the same experience. This polisher gets really, really hot, especially if you're using it anywhere between the, speed 4, 5, or 6 setting on there, kind of fast. And in about 40 or so minutes, this thing will heat up to the point where you do legitimately need to take a break, let it cool down before you can come back. Because I didn't. I had a couple of jobs where I was trying to, get it through as fast as I could. It was hot outside. This started getting hot, and I actually ended up burning a couple of brand new pads to the point where they were entirely unusable. But what's interesting is that you don't feel the heat from the palm area at all. So it can be a little deceiving because everything below the palm gets so hot that it will start to degrade the foam. And one of the kind of quick signs that you'll see that it's getting too hot is the product will start to liquefy a little bit more and sling. And so as soon as you start to see that, you should immediately check, hey, this, is this getting hot? Is the backing plate getting hot? And yeah, for me, I'll get about 40 to 45 minutes. If it's a lot cooler outside, maybe an hour before I have to put this down entirely and then switch back over to this. So that's something you do need to be aware of, is that this is not good for hours and hours and hours on end, like I have been able to do with this one, no problem. So heat management is something that I think Harbor Freight does need to address in any of their later models, because it's pretty wild how hot this thing gets. So before we move away entirely from the heating issue that this one has, I did want to bring up the backing plates as kind of the next topic to cover here, right? So from the factory, this one comes with a vented backing plate, and that I think is supposed to help with thermal buildup, heat dissipation. It doesn't, and I've even just gone as far as buying a Roops, a pretty high-end backing plate, and putting it on there that also has the thermal venting holes. Still didn't fix the issue, but I do like how the Roops, it is a little bit more firm, and it helps you get a little bit better contact when you're going to do some more aggressive cuts. But in all honesty, I think I had seen some information. In fact, I think I even brought it up in one of the videos on here. These Harbor Freight backing plates that these units come with are not super high end, and even on this smaller one, the one that it comes with, the general consensus is to pretty much throw them away as soon as you get them, and then get some better ones, because especially on the one that comes with this, it's really flimsy, and if you get enough stress on this to fracture it around here and it separates, and now you have your rivets scratching up your paint, I mean, that would ruin my day. So that's just to avoid that. I went ahead and bought the Lake Country brand pads, and I have the 6, the 5, and the 3. And now that I'm using this for some of the larger panels, I generally just leave the 3 on the smaller polisher all the time. And that's kind of how I run my setup now. And then building off of the backing plates, these units, I want to talk about the vibration, right? So this unit is pretty manageable. I've never really, I don't have any of the super fancy Adams or Griots or Roops polishers, so I don't really have anything to compare it to, but based on my experience so far, the vibration is not terrible off this unit, to the point where I feel like I need to take a break or anything like that. This one is it does vibrate quite a bit more. And I know there might be something to be said about going down to the 5-inch backing plate versus what comes on it, since you have, weighted counterweights and everything. I really have not seen that. It did not seem to make a big difference going from the 6-inch backing plate down to the 5. I did not really notice any difference in the amount of vibration, but it is still a pretty considerable amount, and it does really make you want to hold on with both hands to keep it on the panel. So yeah, that's my experience with the vibration between these units so far. And then really building off of the vibration argument is the control that you get, having to hold this one with 2 hands versus honestly being able to palm this with 1 hand to get some areas. I do like to use this one quite a bit, because I can put a 3-inch backing plate, reach across, some really tight areas and stuff without having to reach with both arms to hold it together. So I do like how this one, even though this one feels more ergonomic, this one's a little bit more functional from the aspect that it doesn't have to have 2 hands on it all the time. Okay, now that you're brought up to speed on some of the things you can expect getting these polishers, let's talk about some of the areas where these are, I would say, excel in their design. This long throw 20mm polisher is really a workhorse, right? This is designed for fast, aggressive cuts over large, flat, featureless panels. I genuinely think that's probably where this thing's best suited. Now, on the flip side, when you're trying to do very localized, small area, complex geometries, stuff like that, that's where this one comes in, right? Modern cars they seem like they keep getting more and more complex geometries and shapes that are all bent into the metal. And I think that's where this one does a really, really good job of being able to go over those areas and still get adequate contact and control while you're doing that polishing. The other area being the ergonomics, right? So something I noticed when I was detailing my airplane, this thing, it's just heavy enough and heavier than this one that this really sucks to try to hold upside down on the underside of a wing to go and polish the whole thing. So really the entire underside of my plane, I just use this one. It was just easier to hold and it was easier to manage, less vibration. It just made sense to do something like that. So from that aspect, I think you need to take that into account as to what kind of auto, or maybe not even auto, boat or airplane, what kind of detailing are you doing? What angles are you holding stuff in? And what are the ergonomics behind how you're going to use the tools? So with all of those factors considered, I do enjoy using both, even with the limitations that this one has. I think that if I were in a position where I was only going to be able to get one or the other, I think I would have to pick the smaller one over the larger one, just because this has a little bit more cross-functionality, multi-role type performance that I just don't think this one has. And I don't really think it was designed to have. But this one, especially starting out, with, again, being able to swap between 6, 5, and 3-inch pads, that's a huge bonus for anybody just getting started and trying to ball on a budget, right? That was kind of my case getting started, and I never had any jobs that this wouldn't do. And so I think that between being able to swap between the pad sizes, and then also I think one other key area that a lot of people maybe need to do more research on, or especially if you're just getting started, something to consider is that you don't have to follow any one specific company's recipe for success, right? Chemical Guys has their own brand of pads and their own brand of polishes. Same thing with Adams, same thing with Roops and everybody else, right? But in some cases, as I've done a lot of this work, I've learned that, I'll use an Adams polish pad with a Chemical Guys or some other brand McGuire's polish to get a job done. And it's just one of those things, we're kind of mixing and matching once you get a feel for your foam density and how much pressure to apply, how many times to go over it, what are you cutting, are you compounding, are you polishing, once you start to figure out how to mix and match some of those different pads and polishes for these tools, I really think you can be a lot more effective, and you may not necessarily need one of these 20mm long throw polishers. You might be able to get the same results in relatively the same time, doing one of the 6-inch backing plates and having the right foam and compound, right? So that's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily consider. While this one does, going up to the 6-inch pad, I think this is probably more optimized for a 5-inch pad, just because it will, if you throw a 6-inch pad and then you really start working it into the paint, it's going to bog down a little bit. I mean, that's just kind of the general nature. This one doesn't do that, but again, that's what this one's designed to do, is just blast through everything. So again, just to summarize that, I think if you're in the position to buy one or the other only, go with the smaller one. So final thoughts on this whole thing. I like both, and if you have the means to get both, then sure, I think it's a great option. If you have the means to get something way better, do it. I think, you get what you pay for. So I think if you buy higher end, expensive, higher quality, you're probably going to get higher quality. But just for the price point and for what it is, and being able to, you know, you could break this thing 5 times over and still spend a fraction of what you'd spend on a super high-end polisher. So I think that's a good argument towards going for these at the beginner, the entry level, just getting started, getting your feet wet, hobbyist or young aspiring detailer. I think that for the way I use them, I think it makes sense to use both. If this one ever breaks and I need to replace it, I probably won't buy this one again. I think it does well for what I'm doing, but between all of the heat issues and the control, the vibration and everything else, I think I probably would buy a slightly nicer one now that I have the option to. But this one really does well in so many categories that it is, if at a minimum, just getting started with loading out your arsenal of tools, I think this is a no-brainer. And then this one is a next step up when you're getting into some of those jobs that you need to accomplish a little bit faster, and you have more surface area, you're doing more trucks, SUVs, or vans, or something like that. This one does start to make more sense when you get into that area. So that's kind of my 2 cents. If you guys think I left anything out, feel free to comment. I'm always down to learn more. So, and then if you have any additional questions, feel free to drop them and I'll try to answer them as best I can. But that is my overview of my experience so far using both of these polishers.